Welcome to the Stoned-Ape Podcast. I'm Wes, and today we'll be finishing up the Odyssey. If you need to catch up, there'll be links below for part 1. And when we left Odysseus, he had just washed up on Ogygia, Calypso's island, being her captive lover against his will. And that's pretty much the setup for this one, so we're just going to jump right in and spark one up. And today we're going to be smoking another strain from Avenue. The last show we had Avenue as well, and this is going to be an indica, and the strain is called Kush Mints. And the particular grow I got is 28.6%, and the terp level is going to be 2.57%. And looking online here, it says Kush Mints is an indica. It's animal mints mixed with Bubba Kush crossed with it. Kush Mints blends cool mint and creamy vanilla with Kush depth, creating a flavor that's indulgent yet composed. The inhale is smooth and dense, unfolding in waves that balance sweetness with earth. As an indica, it leans restorative and grounding, wrapping the body in a heavy calm. All right, and this is pretty nice bud. I know I mentioned that in the last episode about just the quality of Avenue, and I did talk to a bud tender as well, and I'm not sure Avenue is a house brand of True Leaf. I haven't really seen it at the other dispensaries, but from he was telling me, the answer is no to that. I don't know if it's normally in California. Again, I wasn't able to find too much about it. On Leafly, it has like a meter here, and the calming is going to be a little less than halfway. I'd say like 30%, and the THC is high. So on Leafly, it says Kush Mints is a hybrid weed strain made from a genetic cross between animal mints and Bubba Kush. This strain is 50% sativa and 50% indica. And if that were true, why wouldn't this line be in the middle of this meter? Kush Mints is a potent, flavorful strain that has a minty and cookie-like aroma and a flavor with hints of gas and pine. It has a balanced high that is both relaxing and euphoric, with a pleasant body buzz and a creative mind. Kush Mints is 28% THC, and that is on par. Mine's 28.6, making this strain an ideal choice for an experienced cannabis consumer. All right, I'm not going to read all of it, but that's what you got. We got Kush Mints. The top effects are aroused, relaxed, and euphoric, and the flavors are going to be menthol, mint, and ammonia. Ammonia. That doesn't sound that tasty, but we're going to smoke it anyway. So if you want to leave me a comment or send an email, let me know what you're smoking when you listen to the show. Definitely tasting that minty, pine, menthol type flavor. I'm not sure exactly what ammonia tastes like, but I guess it tastes like that too. Who fucking knows? All right, so we did the first 12 books in the first episode, and now we're going to jump in on book 13. Odysseus is still telling his story to Alcinous, king of the Phaeacians. And after his tale was over, the king told Odysseus, for all he had suffered, he shall sail home at last. They hang out a bit more, and they eat and have some drinks, and then they go to the ship where Odysseus passes out on the way home. The ship careered down a plain like a 4-horse team until finally it made landfall, Ithaca, at last. So Odysseus is still passed out, and the Phaeacians just leave him there on the beach, and they gave him some treasures too, and then they go back home themselves. And Poseidon sees this, the earthquake god, and he's not happy about it. Not happy at all. So he goes to Papa Zeus, who was actually Poseidon's brother, it wasn't his father, and tells him that he didn't like what was going on. It's like the gods didn't even like him, you know? So Zeus calms him over a bit, and they decide that Poseidon should turn the Phaeacian ship into stone in the middle of the sea. So I believe it was like in their harbor, like they almost made it home, but he turned it to stone, and there was a prophecy about it being turned into a mountain, but it didn't. At first I thought it did turn into a mountain, but apparently it just turned to stone. And again, it was to block people from coming into port, stop things from going out of port, basically kill the island. So apparently there was the prophecy about this, and King Alcinous knew about it himself, and his people knew about it too. So on the island, they started freaking out and started getting bulls prepared to pray to Poseidon. So Odysseus wakes up, and Athena puts a mist over him so no one can recognize him. He's been gone for 20 years now. I'm not sure why they would recognize him anyway, but this is the story. And he doesn't know where he is, so Athena walks up to him looking like a young shepherd boy and tells him that he is in Ithaca. So Odysseus tells the boy he doesn't believe him at first, and also tells him how he killed some dude, Orsilochus, for trying to take his spoils from Troy. I'm not sure what this story came from, but honestly it would take like a college professor to really explain everything correctly. And then Athena appears as a beautiful and tall woman, and he knows who she is at this point, and he's blown away. So they talk a bit about his journey, and then he takes the treasure the Phaeacians left him to a secret cavern Athena found and sealed it with a stone. It was pretty nice of them to leave the treasures, but I guess they don't need it anyway because they're stoned now. All right. Odysseus and Athena sit there a bit, plotting out how Odysseus would get rid of the suitors haunting his home and family. And they decided that Athena would turn him into an old beggar. And after he's finally convinced everyone he's no threat, basically, he will slaughter them like pigs. I guess Odysseus liked this plan. Athena tells him to go to the swineherd, Eumaeus, because he is a loyal dude, and she would go to Sparta to get his son in Lacedaemon. All right, book 14. Odysseus goes to his swineherd, Eumaeus, and they talk a bit. Eumaeus tells the old man in rags about his king, who must have died defending Agamemnon's honor in Troy, and about the suitors at his home. The old man tells him that the king did not die and is on his way home, and he tells him that Odysseus will return to take revenge on any man who offends his wedded wife. And Eumaeus didn't believe him at first, and asked the old man who the hell he is. And Odysseus, the great teller of tales, makes up an origin story. He tells him an elaborate story of how he was a rich man's son from Crete who fought in Troy, and he tells him how he became in the rags he was wearing, and how the gods had brought him and hid him where he was. Eumaeus wasn't easy to convince at first, but by the end of book 14 he starts to give in a bit, and after making the two of them something to eat, they go to sleep. Book 15, and this is by far the shortest one. I'll put it together here. So Athena goes to Sparta, finds Telemachus, and inspires him to return home. Telemachus and Nestor's son, Pisistratus, go with Menelaus to Phaera and sleep. The next day they make it to Pylos and sail to Ithaca. As they're preparing to leave, a fugitive of Argos, Theoclymenus, approaches them, and Telemachus offers him a ride on their ship. Back at the swineherd's place, Odysseus, still disguised as the old beggar, talks to Eumaeus about his parents. And Eumaeus tells him that his father is still alive, but wishes he was dead, aching for his son being gone so long and his mother killed herself in agony, and also about how Penelope is so lost and upset about the suitors and the loss of her husband. And they talk for a while, and then they go to bed. And book 15 ends with Telemachus and his crew landing in Ithaca. Book 16. Telemachus goes to the swineherds and meets his father. And this is the old beggar now. He doesn't know it's his father. And they talk about the suitors a bit, and then Telemachus tells Eumaeus to go to his mother and tell her he's home. And after the swineherd leaves, Athena shows up and tells Odysseus to tell his son the truth, who he is and why he's in this disguise. Athena stroked him with her golden wand. First she made the cloak and shirt on his body fresh and clean, then made him taller, supple, young. His ruddy tan came back, the cut of his jawline firmed, and the dark beard clustered black around his chin. When Telemachus seen him, he gazed at him, wonder-struck, terrified too. It takes a little convincing, but finally Telemachus believes that Odysseus is who he says he is, and then they cry and hug each other. Eumaeus, he makes it back to Penelope, and though he tries to stay discreet, the suitors hear that Telemachus has returned, and they're not happy about it. So the suitors go down to the boat, all riled up, and Telemachus isn't there, so they storm back to the palace. And when they return, Penelope confronts them about conspiring against her son, and they basically just bullshit and lie to her and tell her that Odysseus is probably dead again, and she goes back to her room and cries in grief. Afterwards, Eumaeus returns to his place with Odysseus and Telemachus and tells them what had transpired at the palace, and they eat well before they go to sleep. Book 17. Book 17 is pretty short too. Telemachus, in Book 17, returns to his mother and tells her of his talks with Menelaus about his father. Theoclymenus, the fugitive from Argos, foreshadows what will be happening here. He tells Penelope that Odysseus is on native land and how he's going to kill the suitors, but Penelope does not believe him. And while they're talking, the suitors are back at the palace. They're ready to eat and kill some of Odysseus's prime meats, and Odysseus himself, he's preparing to come to town. And once they get to the palace, Athena tells Odysseus to do a little begging and see who's the worst of them. And that ends up being Antinous. And he talks a little shit to Odysseus, and Odysseus gives him a little back to the point where he hurls a stool at Odysseus, and it hits him in the back. After hearing about this altercation, Penelope tells Eumaeus to go get the stranger so she could speak with him and apologize. And the beggar says he will meet her when the sun goes down. Eumaeus goes back to Telemachus and the suitors, and he eats a bit more and then goes back to his pigs. The day was over and dusk was falling. Book 18. So another beggar comes to the palace, and Homer calls him a tramp. His name is Eumaeus, but for some reason they call him Iris, and he ends up having a beggar fight with Odysseus. He starts talking a lot of shit to Odysseus about being a nuisance, and they share some insults, and then Antinous convinces the suitors to help rile them up. And that's what happens. Before kicking his ass, Odysseus makes the suitors swear an oath not to interfere, and they do this. Back to the freaking promise thing. When I hear swear, I just think promise. So I just see him like, yeah, guys, I'll fight him, but you got to promise. You're not going to step in and try to fuck this up for me. And then, yeah, old beggar, we're not going to do anything. Okay, so Odysseus was deeply torn about how to go about this fight, and whether or not he should just knock him senseless or leave him for dead. He did not want to be discovered by the suitors. So Iris hurled a fist at Odysseus' right shoulder as Odysseus came through with a hook below the ear, pounding Iris' neck, smashing bones inside, and suddenly red blood came spurting out of his mouth, and he pitched in the dust. The suitors had a nice laugh about this, and then Odysseus takes him off the porch and heaps him against the courtyard wall. Just Hulk throws him, and then he goes back to his seat with the suitors. Antinous and Amphidamas give him some food for his victory, and they talk a bit, and suddenly Athena gives Penelope the ambition to go to the suitors. And her maiden convinces her to take a bath before, and Athena makes her fall asleep and also makes her taller, fuller in form to all men's eyes, and her skin whiter than ivory for some reason. And when Athena leaves, Penelope wakes up, and she feels like $1,000,000. She says, no more wasting away my life longing for my husband. She then goes downstairs to the suitors, where their knees went slack, their hearts dissolved in lust, all of them lifted prayers to lie beside her and share her bed. She asked her son why they had been fucking with the stranger, and Telemachus tells her about the fight and how the stranger beat Iris. Some suitor, Eurymachus, told her that she surpasses all women in build and beauty, and she tells them that she's basically a shell of her former self, since the gods decided to take her husband away. And Odysseus, as the old beggar, he's just sitting there loving this shit. Antinous tells her that they aren't leaving until she has wed the best of the suitors, and they all sent their pages to go grab some gifts for the queen. And she looks at all the gifts and goes back to her room, and the suitors danced until night came upon them. That's pretty much. That's bait. Athena had no mind to let the brazen suitors hold back their insults, so I guess she was a major instigator at this point. Eurymachus starts talking shit to the old beggar, making fun of him, and Odysseus tells him he'd like to go work beside him. Sort of, give me the same scenario and we'll see who the real man is kind of thing. Eurymachus throws a stool at Odysseus, but he crouches at Amphidamas' knees, and it hits the wine steward, whose cup drops and falls flat on his back, and all the suitors get a kick out of this. Prince Telemachus then calls them all fools, and tells them not to mess with the stranger. They were a bit stunned by this, but then decided to do as the prince commands. They all then had some wine and went their way to bed, each suitor to his house. So I guess they went home at this point. I don't think that they're... It's weird because it's like they're always there, but they left. And some of these people, I believe at this time, travel wasn't fast. So I believe some of these people may have lived days away. That could or could not be true. But anyway, this is the story. Book 19. Odysseus is waiting in his hall as Athena helps him plot the slaughter of the suitors. And he turns to his son and tells him that they should hide all the suitors' weapons. They were really Odysseus' weapons anyway, and Telemachus does his father's will. This is like a no-shit thing, right? Okay, one of Penelope's maidens, who I believe was a mistress to one of the suitors, Eurymachus, starts nagging at Odysseus, and Penelope hears this. She doesn't like it, and she calls her a bitch and tells her to leave the beggar alone. Penelope then has Odysseus a chair made beside her, and they sit and talk a bit. She tells the beggar about her husband and how all the suitors are more or less convinced her that her husband's dead. Then she asks him about himself, and he gives her the Crete story that he's been telling everybody. The master improviser, he says his name is Aethon, falsehoods all, but he gave his falsehoods all the ring of truth. And he told her he had met with her husband too, and she wanted proof. She wanted the beggar to tell him the clothes her husband was wearing. And the beggar said it had been some 20 years, but he could still see him now. What a memory. He was wearing a heavy woolen cape, sea purple, with a golden brooch to clasp it. And he said he gave Odysseus a bronze sword and saw him off in his long bent ship of war. Penelope cries a little and tells the stranger that he'll be her special friend and honored guest. She remembers the clothes he had spoke of, because she had gave those to Odysseus. No shit. Good memory, though. It had been 20 years. Penelope then has one of her old maidens give him a bath, the stranger. And this old maiden, I believe, also knew Odysseus from way back. And her name was Euryclea. That's what I'm going with, anyway. And she knew who the beggar was from the scar he had got from a boar's tusk years earlier. And she doesn't give it away, though. She plays along with it. I think there was a point where she tried to give Penelope a look or tell her something about her husband, but Athena wasn't having that shit. They really invested a lot of time and effort in this elaborate suitor slaughter plan. So Odysseus grabs her by the throat and pulls her close to him. I guess they weren't too discreet. And pretty much tells her that if he fucks this up, that he'll have to kill her. He's just like, Euryclea, I fucking love you, man. I miss you, man. I know you know who I am. But if you say a fucking word, I'm going to have to kill. All right. Something along those lines. So Euryclea tells him that he's being ridiculous. She says she's solid as a fucking rock and wouldn't do anything to mess up their plans. So she gives him a bath and she rubs him down with some oil. And then he goes back to sitting with Penelope. And they talk about whether she should try to get with one of the suitors. And Odysseus tells her to just chill the fuck out. Your husband's coming back alive. And Penelope still can't trust him about this. It's been a long-ass time. So she ends up going back to her room and crying over heartbreak. And Athena seals her eyes with welcome sleep. I'm going to have to get a drink. All right, Cushmint's got that cottonmouth thing going. Book 20. Athena helps Odysseus get some sleep and stop plotting the way he's going to kill these suitors, but Penelope at this point can't sleep. She prayed for the huntress, Artemis, to give her death in her sleep with Odysseus on her mind. And at those words, dawn rose on her golden throne. So Telemachus gets up and grabs a sword and spear and puts on his sandals, and he talks to Euryclea, the old maiden we talked about, and she sent the other maidens out to do some things for him. And one of those things was to go to the swineherd, Eumaeus, and bring back 3 fat porkers. When he gets back to the palace, he talks to the old beggar a bit. And that is Eumaeus we're talking about. Once he gets, he went and got fetched for Telemachus. So some suitors come by and talk a little shit to him, and then the cowherd stops by too. He misses Odysseus, and that's what I'm talking about. In the first part, it had said that everyone he had ruled had forgotten about him. And then here are these 2 people, at least, not even counting his family. I mean, it's been 20 years, and this guy's still like, man, fucking Odysseus. He was a cool king. I mean, it's cool, like, not having a king right now, I'm not going to lie. But I think Odysseus was a cool guy. Okay, so one of the suitors, they go to the rest of the suitors and basically tell them that their plan to kill the prince probably won't go anywhere. And they should just feast, so that's what they do. They go back to the palace and eat some shit. So Telemachus sits the old beggar down, and the suitors can't believe this. They mock and taunt Telemachus, but he shows them no mind. Athena does nothing to hold back their mockery and insults from the suitors. So they're just sitting around making fun of this old beggar Odysseus, I suppose. And then one of the guys throws an ox hoof out of a basket at Odysseus, who ducks and barely misses him. Telemachus tells him that he's lucky he missed the old man. If he had hit him with that ox hoof, Telemachus would have planted his spear in his bowels. And this shuts him up, and this book basically ends with a buildup of anger while all the suitors are insulting the old beggar. Penelope hears them too, and Athena filled them with an unstoppable craze. But as for supper, what could be less enticing than what a goddess and a powerful man would spread before them? A groaning fest. They're really building this shit up. Book 21. Book 21, Athena inspired Penelope to get Odysseus' bow and arrow given to him by Amphialus of Sparta, a great weapon that the king never took abroad and kept stored away. She drew her husband's weapon from its sheath, and after weeping and sobbing a bit, she went back to the hall to meet her proud admirers. Then there's almost kind of like a King Arthur type situation here. She puts the bow out and then delivered an ultimatum to her suitors. She said, I set before you the great bow of King Odysseus now, the hand that can string this bow with greatest ease, that shoots an arrow clean through 12 axes, is the man I will follow. For some reason, his son, Telemachus, is the first to attempt stringing the bow after setting up the axes, and I also do not understand the geometry of these axes. To be fair, it's not like I know a shitload about axes. But Telemachus is unable to string the bow, and he says, My betters, so much stronger than I am, try the bow and finish off the contest. So the first to try this was Leodes, Onops' son, and when he tugged the strings, his hands went slack, and he called for someone else to take it and try, and with those words he thrust the bow aside and went to his seat. So Odysseus, the cowherd, and the swineherd end up going outside, and Odysseus tells him that their king has returned and showed them the scar on his leg he got from the boars. So I guess everybody knew about this fucking scar. And after seeing this, they kissed his head and shoulders, and Odysseus did the same to them. Odysseus tells Eumaeus, the swineherd, to put the bow in his hands, and tell the serving women to lock the doors, and if they hear men groaning, not one of them show their face. And he tells Philoetius, this is the cowherd, to lock the bolt in the courtyard's outer gate, and with that Odysseus goes back to his seat while the king's 2 men begin their instructions. So Eurymachus, one of the suitors, tries the bow and fails, and he suggests they just sit the bow down for a bit, and have some drinks, burn some goat thighs for Apollo, and try the bow later. And this seemed like a good plan to the suitors, so that's what they do. So later, the beggar says with all his cunning, after they have some drinks for amusement, give him the bow. And with his modest words, he sent them all into a hot, indignant rage. Antinous basically tells him he's a grifter, and he's not qualified to attempt this contest, but Penelope tells him that he is. If he strings the bow, he'll get the same prize as any of them. Telemachus chimes in and tells her to go back to her quarters, and astonished, she withdraws to her room, weeping for Odysseus, until Athena seals her eyes with welcome sleep. Eumaeus grabs the bow and is walking towards Odysseus with it. The suitors are heckling him and trying to convince him to stop this bow beggar nonsense, and Telemachus is cheering him on to complete his task. I just imagine this in slow motion. Like, no, don't give him the bow. And Telemachus is over there like, yeah. And, I don't know why I see that in slow-mo. I'm sure that's not what Nolan did with it. All right, finally the swineherd made it to his disguised king and placed the bow in his hands. And the suitors mocked him a bit, but with virtuoso ease Odysseus strung his mighty bow. Horror swept through the suitors, and their faces went white as Zeus cracked the sky with a bolt, his blazing sign. Odysseus grabs an arrow and lets it fly, never missing an axe from its first handle clean through the last. And again, never missing a handle clean through the last. Somebody send me a picture, a diagram of how 12 axes are set up, if you know that I'm an idiot for not understanding this right off the bat. So anyway, he does this, and then he looks at his son and says, the hour has come to serve the master's right. At that sign, Prince Telemachus grabbed his sword and spear and took his place by his father, his bronze spear point glinting like fire. Book 22, Slaughter in the Halls. So all of them have names. All the chapters have different names, but this is the only one I wrote down. I'm not sure if this is original or if that was something that was added later, but this one's called Slaughter in the Halls. So in my mind, at this point, it's almost like a Kill Bill scenario with Odysseus being Uma Thurman, but it isn't just him doing the slaughtering. He does have some assistance, but it's almost like that. It's like he's standing there and just a group of guys, 108 of them. So Odysseus grabs his bow and quiver and yells, Apollo, give me glory! And with that, he trains his stabbing arrow at Antinous, who is having a drink of wine. Odysseus aims and shoots Antinous square in his fucking throat, and he drops his cup of wine, and his lifeblood spurts out of his nostrils in thick red jets. The suitors burst into an uproar as bread and meats are sprayed in a swirl of bloody filth, and they leapt on their seats and start yelling at Odysseus that he had killed the best in Ithaca. Odysseus yells back, "You dogs! You never imagined I'd return from Troy, so cocksure that you bled my house to death, ravishing my servant women, wooing my wife behind my back while I was still alive. No fear of the gods, or that a man's revenge might arrive someday. All of your necks are in a noose. Your doom is sealed." And I'm not sure exactly what the cocksure thing is all about. I don't know if that was like his form of, them thinking he's a cuckold for back in the day, but in my mind, that's what it is. So terror gripped them all. Eurymachus chimes in that Antinous was the ringleader, and since he had received the death he deserved, maybe Odysseus could just spare the rest, and they would pay him back in taxes. And Odysseus tells him that if he paid him all his father's wealth, he was still going to die. His menace shook their knees and hearts. Eurymachus drew his two-edged sword and hurled himself at the king, and in the same breath Odysseus loosed an arrow, tipping his breast beside the nipple so hard it lodged in the man's liver, and the mist of death swirled down his eyes. Amphinomus rushed the king, but Telemachus stopped him and stabbed him with his bronze spear between the suitor's shoulders. Then Telemachus said that he would go grab more weapons and shields for the swineherd, cowherd, and his father. He grabbed 8 spears, 4 shields, and 4 helmets. And that sounds like a lot to carry, but he was back to his pops in no time. Odysseus picked off the suitors with his bow one by one, corpse of corpse in droves. When he runs out of arrows, he puts on a helmet and grasps 2 rugged lances tipped with fiery bronze. I guess there was one spot they might be able to escape from, so Odysseus sends the swineherd to guard that area and keep everyone inside. Melanthius helps the suitors acquire weapons themselves, but with Athena on Odysseus' side, they didn't really have a chance. And after a bit more fighting back and forth, Odysseus, Telemachus, Eumaeus, and Philocteus team up and basically kill everyone until there are 2 left. Leodes slung himself on Odysseus, clutching his knees, begging him to spare his life. Odysseus hacked him square across the neck, and his head went tumbling in the dust. And now one was left, Phemius, Terpus' son. So Phemius was a bard who always performed for the suitors, and he decided to lay his lyre on the ground and grasp Odysseus' knees and beg for mercy. And at that moment, Telemachus tells his father that the man is innocent just for being a bard, and the herald Medon should be spared too, if he isn't already dead. And then the herald spoke up. He's like, hey guys, I'm here. I'm the one other live guy over here that isn't killing people. And Odysseus, he just laughed this off like it was no big thing. And I think that's pretty funny. He's just, oh, Phemius, don't be a pussy. You thank my son. Thank my son for me not cutting your head off, because I was seeing a little red there. That's basically how it goes. So Odysseus searched the house for anyone still alive, and he found them one and all blood and dust. The suitors lay in heaps, corpse covering corpse. He has his son fetch the maiden Euryclea, and she comes immediately and finds Odysseus in the thick of slaughtered corpses, splattered with blood filth like a lion that devoured some ox in the field and lopes home covered in blood. Odysseus asks Euryclea to have the maidens clean the place up before the queen comes out, and they snap to their tasks. First they got rid of the bodies, and then they scrubbed down the elegant chairs and tables, and took out the filth while Telemachus and the herdsmen took care of the floors. After this, they walked the maids out back, and Telemachus orders his men to kill the maids for assisting the suitors in fucking up his house. And he calls them sluts and the suitors whores. And then nooses yank their necks one by one. Oh, so they just get these guys, these ladies, I guess, to clean up the whole place and get rid of all these dead bodies, clean up all the blood, and then they walk them out back and kill them. Then the swineherd, the cowherd, and Telemachus take Melanthius, the disloyal, and lop his nose and ears with a knife, and tear his genitals out for the dogs to eat raw, and also hack off his hands and feet. Pretty crappy way to die. After all the killing was finished, the 3 washed their hands and feet and went to Odysseus. Odysseus tells Euryclea to bring him sulfur to scour all the pollution, and fire to fumigate the house, and call Penelope afterwards. Odysseus purged his palace, halls, and court with cleansing fumes. I guess the nurses didn't get with the suitors. After the home had been cleansed, the other women came out to see Odysseus and showered him with kisses and hugs. Odysseus got a little teary-eyed too, because he missed these chicks. Book 23. Euryclea goes to tell the queen that her husband is home at last and tells her that he had killed all the suitors. And Penelope told her the gods had made her mad. And she told the queen the stranger had been her husband the whole time. and she tells her about finding him standing over the dead bodies. So Penelope runs down to Odysseus, and after sitting a while in silence, Telemachus approaches, and he asks his mother, why isn't she sitting next to his father, asking him questions? But the man doesn't seem like the man she remembered. It's been a long time. She tells her son that if this was in fact her long-lost husband, that he would be able to answer some questions. At this, Odysseus smiles and tells his son to go along so his mother can test his memory. He says they all need to wash up first, so Odysseus is washed and rubbed with oil, and Athena crowned the man with beauty head to foot, made him taller to all eyes, his build more massive, and down his brow the great goddess ran his curls like thick hyacinth clusters full of bloom. When Penelope sees him after, she does recognize this man, the same man that left for Troy 20 years earlier, but still for some reason isn't completely convinced. She asks the maids to move his bed, and then he starts going off on a rant about his bed's origins, how he built the palace around an olive tree and carved a bed in the base of the tree. It's a pretty long story. And after this, Penelope knows it is in fact her husband, and they both are confined in each other. Odysseus tells his journey story, and then they make love. And then they go to bed. And the next morning, Odysseus leaves to go see his pops, but tells Penelope to stay inside and don't talk to anyone. Someone would eventually be by to look for those suitors. He strapped his burnished armor around his shoulders, roused Telemachus, the cowherd, and the swineherd, and told them to take up weapons honed for battle. They snapped to his command and were off. Athena shrouded them all in darkness during daytime and led the 4 men out of town. Book 24, and this is the final book. It begins with Hermes, with a wand of pure gold, escorting the suitors' ghosts to the field in Asphodel, where the dead make their home. First, Agamemnon approaches and talks to Achilles for a bit about how they both died. Hermes, the guide and giant killer, then leads the suitors past the 2 ghosts, Agamemnon and Achilles, and Agamemnon remembers one of these suitors, and he tells the old king how Odysseus slaughtered them. Agamemnon was probably like, yeah, did you hear about my wife? Did you hear about Aegisthus? I can't remember that fucker's name. So on Earth, Odysseus, he goes to his father, and he tests him a bit because his father didn't recognize him, and he finally hugs him and kisses him and tells him who he is, and he's home at last. And they had a feast and shared stories with each other. So while this is going on, the father of the suitors had heard about their son's death, and they sobbed and retrieved the bodies from the palace for burial. And the father of Antinous tries to rally the men to avenge their sons, but the herald Medon speaks up, saying basically that the suitors were in the wrong, and the killing was just for them being so unjust. But some of the men were still upset, and yelled out war cries. Eupeithes, possibly, leads a group to avenge his dead son. Meanwhile, Athena is up in Olympus talking to Zeus and watching this unfold. She asks Father Zeus if he's going to prolong the pain of these people, and Zeus asks her if this is not the plan she designed. Then he sends Athena to spread peace amongst the people of Ithaca, since Odysseus had taken his just revenge. She leaves Olympus as the group of pissed fathers approach, and they think there's going to be another battle for a minute. Odysseus and his men put their battle dress on and grab their weapons, and suddenly Athena approaches Odysseus in the build and voice of Mentor, and she goes to Odysseus' dad, Laertes. Homer says Athena breathed enormous strength in the old man. He then launched his spear and hit Eupeithes. Then as Odysseus is getting back ready for the final battle, Athena's piercing voice stopped all the fighters. Hold back, young men of Ithaca, back from brutal war. Break off, shed no more blood, make peace at once. At this, the weapons slipped from their hands and they spun in flight to the city. Athena tells Odysseus to hold back now. Call a halt to the great leveler, war. So she commanded. He obeyed her. Athena handed down her pacts of peace between both sides for all years to come. The daughter of Zeus, but the goddess still kept Mentor's build and voice. And that'll do it. What a fucking story, huh? I did freaking love it, though. I love going through it, and hopefully I did it justice. Kept the action parts actiony and explained the story in a coherent way. It is an old-ass story, but one that's been used over and over again. And it still has a lot of weight. I know I'm looking forward to seeing the Odyssey. It's said that Alexander the Great traveled with the Odyssey, and maybe he did. But thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a like or a review. If you have something to say or a good subject to explore, leave a comment or send an email to stoned-ape-pod@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook at the Stoned Ape Podcast with Wes Ranson. And if you like your podcast on YouTube, we're at youtube.com/@the-stoned-ape-pod. We'll have links for all these down below, a link to our socials and our Patreon. If you can support the show, it's greatly appreciated, but just showing up every other week is really the most important part. Thanks again, and have a chill day.